Hey, my name's Scott. If you're watching this video, you probably watched the previous one, which was what's in my camera bag for 2019. This is where I'm going to go through how I got to that point, because if you watched it and thought, good God, I can't even afford a 50mm 1.8 at £100, how on earth do I get into this industry where the equipment's so expensive? Do not panic. I was in the same position. It takes time. I don't come from a particularly rich background. You know, my dad worked in a factory. My mum had the odd part-time job here and there, so there's no like money being injected into this by parents. It's just been paid for by myself, and I've not always been the best with finances. It's something I've had to learn to sort of be better at because of what I want to do as a career. So it all started with having nothing to do, and I wanted a hobby. So I got a Pentax K1000 or something for 20 quid and some black and white film, and off I went taking pretty god-awful pictures of stuff, snapshots of things. Then eventually my uncle very kindly lent me his Canon D450, which I'm sure you can get for £100 nowadays. And off I went, and I started to make some money. I actually ended up shooting a magazine cover with McFly because somebody I knew double booked them. There was some weird, some strange turn of events. My first ever shoot was a magazine cover of McFly. I was an awful photographer, but they did everything for me, and it went fine. After that, I carried on going along. You know, I was charging people £25 for a picture, £50 here, maybe a couple of £100 for an entire 8 hours day, plus God knows how much editing to fix all of my blunders. I was still shooting in JPEG, I'm guessing, back then. I must have still been shooting in JPEG. So I remember going to a friend for him to try and fix something I'd messed up, and him going, "Where's the RAW file?" And me looking completely baffled, going, "I don't know what a RAW file is. I don't know how to edit pictures. Please save this image." So there I was. After a while, I'd made a bit of cash, and maybe I got a tax rebate or something, I don't know, but I got some money from somewhere, and I bought a Canon 50D and an 18-50 zoom lens. And off I went. I was shooting gigs, I was shooting weddings, I was second shooting at weddings, and I was making a little bit of cash here and there, maybe £300, £400 a month. And I put that money to one side, and eventually I bought a 5D Mark II. The 5D Mark II back then was £1,500 second hand. It wasn't new, but the 5D Mark III wasn't out. It was a brilliant, still is a brilliant camera. It was a game changer. Going from a 50D to a 5D Mark II was brilliant. This is sort of similar to the 50D, it's a 70D. The newer ones don't feel as well built as 50, 40 and 30D cameras. But if you're going for a brand new crop frame camera and you're going to be doing food, commercial, portraiture, get a second-hand 5D Mark II instead. Rather than buying the 80D or 90D or whatever they're up to now, buy the 5D Mark II second hand for £500, you will get far better images. All the fancy bells and whistles that these cameras claim to have are useless. This is what you want. This will get you better images. So off I went with this. I'd got myself an 85mm lens for £200. I'd bought a 20mm lens for £200. I'd bought a 50mm lens for about £300 as the 1.4. So the Gold Ring series. I cracked on and I shot for a few years with just that kit. A flash on top, it would have been like a 580 EX2 or something like that with a battery pack. One of these, before we could get the Godox things, we used to have to use these or spend about £1,000 on a Quantum pack. And then the trusty Pocket Wizards, these are the Flex TT5s. And they let us do high-speed sync, which was revolutionary back then. Nowadays, it's just standard. So yes, shooting on these cameras, it was great. And I did this for years. I just banked all of the money. And eventually I was like, well, do you know what? I'm getting some ad campaigns now. I need to be secure that if this goes belly up, I can keep shooting. So I bought another 5D Mark II. They dropped down to about £1,000 then. So I've got my two 5D Mark IIs and my prime lenses. And then I was like, well, I need some versatility as well. So I need to get some zooms. So I bought the 17-40, 24-70, which is this lens here. And this beast, which makes it look like a right idiot out in public, the 70-200. These are all 2.8s, apart from this is the f4. But they're all the Mark I. The Mark II was available, but these were cheaper. I don't think anyone can tell the difference. I mean, you can tell the difference in looking at the lens, but in terms of looking at the images, no one's going to look at your image and go, oh, do you know what? If you'd got a Mark II lens for an extra £1,000, that would be a better image. Because it wouldn't. It's just not true. Zoom lenses have limitations. And if you're going to spend your money, spend it on a prime lens. Buy a really expensive prime lens, because there you will really see the difference. Even a cheap prime lens versus a Mark II or Mark III zoom lens will be better. So that's how I'd spend my money if I was doing it again, which hopefully I won't ever have to do it again. So all these zoom lenses and bits now are retired because I'm shooting with the kit that I've got, which I've done a video about. But that's how I got to the stage of having the 5D Mark IIs and the lenses. I then bought this 35 Prime as well, and that was it. From that point until this year, I didn't buy any more kit. Even when I decided to specialise in food, and I've got a 35 and an 85, which are not the lenses you need for food, I only shop with these. If I needed anything else, anything fancy and exotic, I rented it and I banked the money. Because it's expensive to buy kit, but buying cheap kit's even more expensive. The lens is like the 51.4, the motor broke on that, went through 3 of those. The 20mm 2.8 was completely useless. I was forever sending it back for repairs. Whereas buying good quality lenses work out cheaper in the long run. So I'd amassed this gear and I was shooting away. I started buying lights and studio kit. And what I realized was, in the commercial field I work in, it's all about the lights and the grip and all the little bits of kit that you have, more so than the cameras. So I've got like 15 big pro lights. I've got, giant soft boxes up on the ceiling. Doesn't really give you true scale looking at the screen, but that thing on the ceiling is massive. You can get about 5 people under it. Got a huge indirect, this way, Oxbox over here. I'm looking into a computer screen trying to point behind me. It's really difficult. It's going to look behind me. I've got a couple of Broncolor heads, which are 3,200 watts each. Got a big flight case over here full of heads. Then behind this is the messy bit. We've got a workbench, a workstation with all the tools and bits like that. All the styling kit. We've got an office over there full of Macs and all of these things make the difference. And the actual cameras themselves are not that important. But I'd amassed quite a lot of kit, and it was all going around my little think tank roller cases. And it was fine for years. And it's only in the last year that I thought I need to upgrade, because I'm having to rent a phase 1 for every single job I'm doing. Because the 5D Mark II wasn't quite good enough. But renting a phase 1 every day is about £1,000 a day. So buying this, the 5DS, was a great way to go, well, do you know what? This job doesn't really warrant a phase 1, but a 5D Mark II is not good enough, but this will do the job nicely. So this is my reason for buying new camera and lenses. It's mostly so I can always have the kit here. I've got a backup for the phase 1 when we do rent it, should it all go really south. And it just saves me money in the long run. So this is actually, it sounds daft spending all the money on this kit. It was a cost-saving exercise. Now, this took me 10 years from beginning to here. And it's probably going to be another 5 years before I go and splurge loads of money on a Hasselblad or a phase 1 and on a load of Broncolor lighting. But these things do take time. The main thing to remember is I was shooting billboard campaigns for worldwide usage on a 5D Mark II with a £200 lens. And I could still shoot them today on that equipment. The reason I use different equipment is purely for efficiency. I can get the job done quicker, I can crop quicker, I can shoot a wide shot, take multiple shots out of it for different applications. It just saves me a lot of time. It also saves me money not having to rent the bigger cameras, which I certainly can't afford. So if you're beginning and you're starting out and you're thinking, good God, I can't afford any of this, any camera will be fine. I think I might have charged somebody something like £5,000 and did a shoot with about £1,000 worth of camera, which I think in terms of, camera cost to shoot ratio is pretty good. And there's no way that having a better camera that day would have given me better images. It's just, a lot of it's about confidence and just knowing that you can get the job done. If you've got a 5D Mark II, if you're looking for a camera, you've got £500, buy a Canon 5D Mark II. I'm sure Nikon have an equivalent. I'd stick to those 2 brands. And the reason I'd stick to those 2 brands is not because they're necessarily the best or better or anything like that. If you need to rent something or borrow something, it's really easy. If you've got a Pentax, trying to rent a tilt shift, I don't even know if they do tilt shift lenses, but if you're trying to rent a lens, it's not going to be quite as straightforward and simple as renting a Canon lens. I know that if something goes really south on a shoot with my Canon kit, I can phone up one of 20 photographers in the area and they'll turn up with Canon gear. I could phone 2 different shops up reasonably near and they'd send something in a taxi. Or I could phone a rental company up and they'd have something here within about 6 hours. So that's my rationale for, sticking to these sorts of brands. And that's how I made the progression as well, from very, cheap beginning cameras to where I am now. I think if you've got £1,000 to spend, go second hand. Unless you've got about £5,000, I'd definitely say go second hand. If you can't afford a £500 5D Mark II, look at buying a 50D. They're about £150, £200, but only buy prime lenses that will work on full frame cameras later on down the line. Trying to avoid buying the zooms like I did, where they only work in crop sensor cameras. There's something that's EFS for crop sensor in Canon and EF for full frame. So if you buy yourself a £200 85mm lens on your 50D, when you can afford a 5D Mark II, that lens comes with you. So it's like you're saving money in the long run. But yeah, that's sort of how I got to where I am now in terms of camera equipment. I hope this was of some use to you. I'm trying to think of things that would have been useful to me when I was starting out.